Hi, welcome to We Wine Whenever. I'm Wendy.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Lori.
We are talking about the JonBenet Ramsey case. There's been a resurgence and a heightened interest in it recently. There's the new Netflix documentary, and we decided we're going to, do a little deep diving and see what we can find out.
Now, what
Yeah.
did you guys only watch the Netflix?
No,
documentary?
I watched several things.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
Okay.
I watched tons of YouTube stuff. I watched TikTok stuff.
I watched the Netflix documentary. There was one on Hulu documentary. There was a couple on Hulu, to be honest with you. There was a lot. There's a lot of information out there. I think that we are going to, at some point, because I'm sure people know this, they still haven't identified the killer yet. Nobody has still been charged with the killing of JonBenet Ramsey. But I do think that we're going to get it at some point. I would say probably within the next year or two. So we're going to kind of go over the facts that we have found out and see what you guys think about it.
Now, let me ask you something. Did your opinions change from the time you, like, I only watched the documentary. I'm sorry. That's all I had time to do. But from the time I started that until the time it was over, my thoughts and opinions had changed, and Eric's too, quite honestly, because I watched it with him.
I never thought the parents did it. I never suspected them, but my opinion changed in that the fact that I think that they are going to be able to find the killer at this point.
I really thought the parents were somehow responsible in the beginning.
Before you watched it, yeah.
Well, even in the beginning of the documentary.
Okay.
But at the end, I'm like, okay, no way. There's no way.
How about you, Laura?
Well, I knew about the case, but I really didn't know about the case. You know what I mean? Like, I knew that she was murdered, and I remembered seeing the parents on TV and blah, blah. So I kind of really came at it from very fresh eyes perspective, because I knew about it, but I really didn't know about it. So I don't know. I feel like I'm going to have a completely different opinion than the two of you. So this should be interesting.
Well, this should be interesting.
Yeah. So we'll start off with the facts, right? JonBenet Ramsey was 6 years old, and on 12/26/1996, her mom called 911 at 5:52 a.m. because she woke up the morning after Christmas. They were getting up early to go catch a flight to go see the other older children in Michigan. And as she was walking down the stairs, she saw some papers on the floor, and she picked up the papers and she started reading it, and she realized that it was a ransom note. And then she ran upstairs to JonBenet's room, and she was gone. So she yelled to her husband, John Ramsey, JonBenet is gone. We've got this ransom note. And he said, call 911. So that's what she did. Despite the fact that the ransom note said, don't contact the police, don't call anybody, but that's what ransom notes always say.
Right, right. So, I would have done the same thing.
I would have too.
I'm not
right
solving this case on my own.
Right. Exactly. So she calls, 911, and, the first police officers that arrive on scene, and they start asking questions, and they're treating this as a kidnapping. They call the detective that's on duty. So the detective shows up, and Patsy, in the meantime, calls her friends whose house she was at the night before, and they call someone to get, why can't I think of his name?
Burke.
Burke. That's it. Burke. For Burke to go over to a friend's house because they didn't want him in the midst of all the commotion. So they get Burke over to a friend's house.
Because how old was he at the time?
He was 9.
9.
Yeah, he was 9. So the friends come over. Burke Ramsey goes to some friend's house. And John Ramsey at this point was focused on getting his daughter back. Like, whatever he needed to do to get his daughter back, that's what his focus was. So the detectives searched the house. I was very surprised to hear that the house was 6,500 square feet.
Did they search the house?
They did search the house. The house is 3 levels. They did search the house. And it was 3 levels, and it was a confusing house because the way there was like windy stairs, and it was, if you saw the house from the outside, it looked like
I think it was 4 levels. The basement, the main level.
Yes, 4
Then
levels.
the
if
second,
you count, yes.
yeah.
4 levels. Yeah.
Yes. So John and Patsy's room was on the 3rd level, which would have been the 4th level, right?
Right.
And then the level below that was JonBenet's room, and her room was on the opposite side of the floor as their bedroom. And then
the house was very deceiving from the outside as to the
Yes.
size of it.
Yeah.
Very
like,
deceiving.
very added on to, very like Warren.
Choppy.
Like, very
Yes.
choppy. Yeah. Windy,
like
twisty.
I said, 6,500 square feet. That's huge.
Huge.
That's
And
huge.
I saw something somewhere that there were over 100 windows in that house.
I believe it. Seriously. I mean, that's a big house. That's a big house.
Yeah.
So then there was the main floor, and then there was the basement. So they get the ransom note. They ask for handwriting samples of John and Patsy Ramsey. So they each do a handwriting sample on 2 separate, pads of paper, and they give it to the detective, and they send that back to the police, headquarters, and they're going to have a handwriting, analyst take a look at it. In the meantime, they're waiting for the ransom call, because in the letter, it says that you will receive a call between 8 and 10 the next morning. Now, they weren't sure what time the letter was written. So if 8 and 10 the next morning was the 26th and they wrote it on the 25th, or if it was the 27th and it was written on the 26th,
though, right?
We're still on the 26th, and we're still early on in the day.
Right.
Because, like I said, she called at 5:52, and the note said that you'd be getting a call between 8 and 10 in the morning. So by 10 o'clock in the morning, John Ramsey, there's more detectives there. They've already collected the handwriting samples. They've already sent them to the police station. Their friends are over there. Burke is at his friend's house, and John Ramsey is getting a little bit antsy. Like, what are you guys doing? It's 10 o'clock. Like, maybe we should go someplace. Like, maybe we should start looking for her. And this female detective, I don't remember her name. It'll come up again.
Linda something.
Yeah, I have it written down. I'm sure it'll come up again. Says to him, well, why don't you take a look around? Why don't you search the house?
Well, I think what she said to him was, why don't you and Fleet take a look around the house and let me know if you see anything that looks out of place.
Out of place, yes.
That's what she told them.
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't like she was sending them to look for JonBenet. She was sending them to look around the house and see if they could see anything, out of place.
Right. To see, right, exactly. So that's what he did. And he decided, and that was actually, that was at 1 p.m. is when she finally told him to search. And he went down to the basement first. He figured, I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. That was his, method. I'll start down the basement. And when he went down to the basement, we now know he opened up the door, which they called the wine cellar, but was really just like a storage area.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw the blanket, and he found JonBenet on the floor with the ligature around her neck, and he tried to loosen it, but it was too tight. So he carried her up the stairs, and, that female detective was there, and they got it off of her neck and realized that she was dead. Now the kidnapping is now a murder scene. But the problem is that now there's been all these people in the house, and the crime scene is totally contaminated. Everything has been touched and moved, and they're just trying to piece things together now at this point.
It's a shit show is what it is.
I mean, just the fact that obviously this is your child, God forbid.
Right.
You see this, you're going to grab her. You're going to grab her. You're going to bring her upstairs. You're going to, you're in shock. You're thinking the best, like, I found her, like, let's get her upstairs. Maybe we can, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't, hold him accountable for anything, the father. But
no.
The cops, I mean, they searched the house. Why didn't you go into that room?
Well, let's put it this way. There's 7 hours for you to search this house. I don't give a fuck how big the house was.
Right.
In 7 hours.
Right.
How does the parents or any of the police officers not locate this child? There's so much about this case that is just absolutely fucking mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling when you really start to look into it. You just don't even know what to think because there's so much to it. So now let's just start from where we are. Okay? So Patsy Ramsey still had on the same clothes from the night before. What's up with that?
What do you
I
mean?
don't know. She still had on the same clothes that she wore to the party the night before.
She didn't have pajamas on?
No. She had on the same clothes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's all these little, like, really bizarre, weird
But did
things.
she really, or did the cops say she did and the media said she did? See, this is the problem.
Well, that's the problem.
Well, that is the
but
problem.
But that was, I believe that was in the police report that she had on the same clothes as the night before. But again,
And
I'm not
again,
sure.
like if you had pajamas on and you go downstairs, you could just throw the clothes on there on like that you just
On your
wore.
floor.
Like I do that, not on the floor, but wherever you put them. Like, so, you know, if I get up in the morning and I just took off my clothes, I'll throw those on to go downstairs. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
And I am someone who wears pajamas. So I would take off my pajamas to go downstairs.
Right.
I don't know. There is a lot of inconsistencies in the story, and there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like you said, 7 hours in the house. I mean,
Like
that's
nobody went into this
hours.
room. And not only nobody went into this room, we're talking about a possible kidnapping here prior to them finding the body. You didn't search the perimeter of the house to see where the entry.
Supposedly, police officers searched the perimeter of the home, and no one noticed anything out of place.
And you know what else? Even if they had seen the window broken, John Ramsey said that the year prior he had to break into that window to get into the house because he was locked out.
Right.
He thought the window got fixed, but maybe it didn't.
But
This
they
guy's
wouldn't have
running a
known
$1
that.
billion company, probably asked his wife or somebody to do it. He's not going to follow up on that.
Right. Now, another weird thing with the window situation is it's fucking cold. It's
Yeah, it's
Denver,
Christmas
Colorado.
in Boulder, Colorado. Yeah.
Like, so the window's broke. All right, you don't get it fixed. But nobody goes in the basement and says, shit, it's kind of cold in here.
Yeah.
Slap some tape on. Like, bizarre.
Well, and when you're searching the house, like, did they not go in the basement? Like,
they did go in the basement, but everything that I saw and I read, they never opened that door.
because if they opened the door, they would have felt how cold it was.
Yep, they never opened that door. That door was never opened.
Door?
And how do you walk into a room, see a window that's open in a kidnapping case with a suitcase
right
underneath it? Not even the suitcase wasn't even like long ways, like flat against the wall, like you would.
It was like he's
put
like
it
it was
there.
stepped on.
Yeah,
to get
it
out.
was used
Like that.
right to get
Like,
in and out for
to
sure.
Definitely to get out.
Yeah. See, okay, we'll get there.
Yeah. So,
and the ransom note was for a wild amount, like $118,000.
When we get to the ransom note, it's just insanity. Absolute insanity.
It was for $118,000. That's exactly the amount that it was for. Also, when he found her, there was tape over her mouth and her hands were tied above her head.
Now, the thing that I saw was that Mr. Ramsey said that he didn't even notice the cording around her neck until he got her upstairs because it was embedded.
It was embedded. I think that's true.
God.
He was trying to take the rope off of her hands because her hands were also
right. He was
tied
trying to untie the right
above her head.
Yeah.
And he did take the tape off of her mouth because there was tape on her mouth also. And there was a blanket, there was a blanket there that she was, covered in.
Now I've heard, and this is the problem with cases like this. It's seen, heard, saw.
Right.
There's so much information out there and who knows if it's true.
Right.
But I've seen some things where it's alleged that the housekeeper said that she had just washed that blanket, and it was JonBenet's blanket that was put on her. It was JonBenet's actual blanket that she was found in, and that she had just washed it the day before. And when she left the house, it was supposedly in the dryer on the second floor.
Well, that's interesting.
So,
I mean, unless one of the
there's just
parents
not
took
much.
it out of the dryer and gave it
Right,
to
which
JonBenet
is
to sleep
totally
with that night.
right, which is totally plausible. You know you're going to be at a party out late. You have her blankie ready. Blah 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 blah.
Listen, Joe went to go to sleep the other night. He's like, "Where's my blanket?" I'm like, "Oh, it's in the dryer."
Yeah. So he started. Another interesting thing is he started looking at 1:00, and by 1:12, they called dispatch to say that they found the body. So that's how quick it happened.
Maybe,
That's quick.
it's
That's
quick.
That's
Maybe
quick.
there was a conversation like, "Did you check the room in the basement?" And they were like, "No," and that's why he went right down there.
I mean,
Who
he
knows?
said in a couple interviews I saw him talk about it, he said that he was just going to start from the bottom and work his way up. I mean, I
So, yeah.
work that way too. That's how I work. I do,
I mean,
things,
why wouldn't you? Yeah.
right?
And you would think that the police department would want to work in such a methodical way also, bottom to top, top to bottom, whatever it is you want to do. It's just the mishandling.
Well, and
Just
part of their
phenomenal.
defense was, I mean, I have the exact number. We only have, this was only our 5th homicide in a year or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that area didn't have a lot of okay, but
No.
you should still have procedures in place. You are the police department.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in regards to the ransom note, there's a lot of switching from we to I, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And there was 2 different uses of the letter A. Not uses, but 2 different methods of writing the letter A.
Got it. 2 different
were
styles, writing
2
styles.
different styles of
Got
the
it.
letter A. And it was found in samples from Patsy's writing that she also did use 2 different styles, those same 2 different styles of writing the letter A. Not to say that she wrote the letter, but I'm just putting a fact out there. Now, also, it was signed, the letter was signed
Victory. right?
SBTC.
Yeah.
Now, John Ramsey was stationed in the Philippines at Subic Bay Training Center.
Oh.
That's another thing that was like, okay.
Okay.
And the handwriting in the note, they did I'm not a handwriting expert by any means. And I know that there were a lot of official people who looked at this, looked at
Sure.
her samples.
Experts. Yeah.
Experts. But they did ask her to write a whole note in her using her non-dominant left hand. And when you look at the 2 samples of writing, they are very similar. Her left-handed writing is very similar to the writing that's on the note.
Okay. You're not saying like ambidextrous, like where her left hand writing is the same as her right hand writing.
No,
You're saying
I'm
her
saying
left
if
hand
she,
writing was similar to the ransom note.
yes, if
Got
she
it.
tried to disguise her handwriting and wrote with her left hand as opposed to her right hand, which they then made her do, those 2 samples were similar.
Okay.
But I think that all the experts determined that it was not either of them, that note was not written by anyone in the family. Didn't they determine that?
Well, they determined that John's was always 100%.
That it was
Hers-
not him.
Right. So hers, a 1 out of 5, let's say 5 being it could totally not be hers. Hers was like at a 4.5. So there was a window.
Right.
That's tiny, though.
It's a very
It is
tiny window.
but
Yeah.
there was a window.
And
There
that's
was a
odd
window.
to me, too, that there even be a window with a handwriting. Oh, it's kind of like a fingerprint. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a fingerprint, but it's kind of like a fingerprint. And this was so long ago because I've been looking into this whole handwriting and ransom notes and manifestos. And now it's so easy to do
Yeah.
it. Now it's like, of course, but back then,
Not, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing that. Like, this
No.
was,
There was also a professor who was one of the top people who not only reviews the actual handwriting itself, but reviewed like how people would phrase things, where they would put a comma, where they would put an exclamation point, where they would blah, blah, blah,
Like
blah,
their
blah.
grammar.
Yeah. And he supposedly was one of the people that said he thought it was very highly likely that Patsy Ramsey wrote it. So it's the whole entire thing is I don't know.
Is a big I don't know.
So I have some more facts too. So John Ramsey was the president of Access Graphics. It was a billion-dollar business. He was 35 years old and Patsy was 23 when they met. He has an older son, John Andrew Ramsey, and we saw him in the Netflix documentary from his first marriage. And he also had two daughters, Beth and Melinda. John Andrew was 13 years older than JonBenet and 10 years older than Burke. In 1992, John Ramsey's daughter, Beth, was 22 years old and was killed in a car accident. And as any parent would be, he was devastated when that happened. And at the time, JonBenet was 18 months old when Beth died in the car accident. John Ramsey and Patsy Ramsey kind of felt like, JonBenet was brought a second life back to the family because of the devastation of losing his daughter. And also Patsy, at this same time in 1993, shortly after that, she found a huge stomach tumor, and it turned out that she had ovarian cancer. And this was in 1993.
Yeah, so I'm wondering like if they had fertility issues prior to her knowing that she had that cancer, because it took her 7 years.
Yeah, it could.
After they got married to have
And
birth.
she was young. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she was young.
Yeah.
And he was older.
She was young.
And she was from the South. I mean, you have an heir and a spare.
Right.
It was always, she was going to have kids because that's just what, So I'm always wondered that, when I was looking at the information.
It's very possible. It's very possible.
Yeah.
So, she had those health issues that she did go into remission. She did chemotherapy. She did go into remission. So the other interesting fact was the cause of death that was on the autopsy report. So the coroner's determination was that the cause of death was either blunt force trauma or asphyxia. So they weren't sure which order it happened. If the strangulation from the garrote with the ligature on the neck asphyxiated JonBenet, or if it was the blow to the head that I think her skull was cracked, I think
like 8 inches.
8 inches, something ridiculous, 6 or 8 inches.
Well, the thing is that I would imagine she died from the blunt force trauma because there were marks on her. She had her own flesh underneath her fingernails, and she had marks on her neck, like as if she was trying to pull the ligature away.
Right. I mean, and again, the coroner couldn't decipher that. And what they were saying is the way that device was created was so that it would choke you out and then loosen it and then bring you back. So it's hard to say. It's just really hard to say. But they did say that when she was sexually assaulted, she was alive then. So that happened prior to her time of death.
Now, 5 days before her murder, her family, there was an article in the newspaper about the business hitting the $1 billion mark.
Oh, there was?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, I have it written down somewhere, maybe a couple days before that, too, she was in a parade that had a float with her name on it. There's a couple other things, too.
I mean,
that
just
were
the
like
fact that
right
she was at these
before.
pageants all the time, and people go there who have no business being there.
Absolutely. But you know that now, but you didn't necessarily
You're right. You didn't know that in
didn't really know
1996.
that then.
No,
No.
it was a different time. It definitely
It
was a
totally
It
different
was
time.
totally a different time. Absolutely.
It was a different time. And listen, Patsy was a beauty queen herself. She was Miss Virginia or West Virginia, Miss West Virginia. And, you know, her daughter saw her trophies and saw pictures of her. And she's like, Mommy, I want to do this. When can I do this? And Patsy had just, you know, went into remission with cancer. And she's like, listen, I don't know if I'm going to be here when she's 16. You know what? If I can do this with her now, let's do this.
And I didn't like how they made it like indecent that her father had pictures of her pageant pictures on his desk. Give me a fucking break. Your kid plays baseball. You put his baseball pictures on your desk. Your daughter does pageants. You put her pageant pictures on the desk. I thought that was outrageous that they were making it like they were over-sexualized pictures on her father's desk.
Well, you know, even though I have a different opinion probably on what could have possibly happened, then maybe you two, there's no way that anybody can disagree that that family was done totally dirty by the police
By
department.
the media.
But because the police department had decided it was them, and I believe from all the things that I've read and looked at that they continuously leaked information to the media to try and put public pressure on the Ramseys, thinking that if we can keep this up, we'll break them. And no, it almost became like like a power struggle.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're gonna break them. We're just gonna keep like pounding it until they break.
Yeah, the police definitely didn't look at any other suspects, John and Patsy Ramsey, or who they thought it was. They didn't think that their reactions were the way they should have been. They didn't think the way that they lived their life and that their daughter was in pageants. And then, you know, they villainized them in the media. I mean, the parents became the villains. And I honestly, I can't even imagine that. Like, you're going through this horrible experience of losing your child who was murdered in your home on Christmas night. And the court of public opinion is blaming you.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
brutal.
can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
So,
And their reasoning, because she soiled the bed and Patsy overreacted.
Yeah, that was crazy when that detective said that.
I mean,
crazy town. And you know what? Her bed wasn't wet.
Exactly.
Right.
She just overcame ovarian cancer. Like, I
give
think
a
she's
shit
going to
if
let
your
the
kid
small
wets
things
that.
go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I found out that detective's name. It was Linda Arndt. Linda Arndt. So
now, did you guys see the interview with her? She
Yeah.
looked like she was possessed. She
Yeah.
looked fucking cuckoo bird. Like,
I mean, she
if
wrote
that's
a book.
if that's the real, like, she needs to put some eyeshadow on if that's her real, like, eye look, because her eyes were, and I mean, I have big, like, crazy eyes.
Okay, we are not criticizing her looks. We're not
I'm
criticizing her
criticizing her
appearance.
I'm just saying.
Just check out my notes.
I'm just
Wait,
saying.
we're not criticizing her appearance.
It was just, she just had crazy eyes. I'm just saying, girls, when you got
Linda Arndt.
and
That's
I'm
who I
saying
have.
it because I have crazy eyes. So I know when I'm on camera, I better have some serious eyeshadow on because I got big ass eyes. Huge.
She's the one
Her
who
eyes were huge.
said, when I told him to look in the house, I saw in his eyes he was the killer. She said that in an interview on national television.
Well, what she said was, when he brought the body up and they were sitting on the floor over the body, looking at each other over JonBenet's body, that they looked at each other. He asked, "Is she dead?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Yes." And then she said, "I knew then."
Right. I know. I mean, I don't know how she looks at herself in the mirror making those accusations at him about that. I mean, and like I said, she wrote a book. She wrote a book.
That's it. That's why she had such a theatrical interview.
Maybe that's why she had the big crazy eyes.
So
I don't recall the crazy eyes, but I do recall the theatrics.
Yes.
Once it became a homicide investigation, the officer that was there, one of the first officers on scene, was no longer involved in it, but they do interview him. I'll find his name later. But what he said was, you know, they said that they were handling it and he just kind of let them do their thing. But then now he's since retired. And after he retired, he started looking into the case and seeing what was really going on and seeing all the missteps that had happened. And one of the things was that they gave this lead detective, I'll find his name too in a minute. He'd never investigated a homicide before.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
I mean, you give someone the lead detective for a homicide that's never done a homicide, that is all over the press, all over the country.
Right. Like any screw up is going to be all over the country, on the news, in the media.
Yeah.
Any slip up.
That was just crazy. So there they are trying to bury their daughter. They take her body down to Georgia, and they're going to have the service in Georgia because that's where the other daughter, Beth, is buried. And that's where they had lived before. They're from Georgia. And John Ramsey gets a call from a trusted employee while he's in Georgia that the police, and they're coming for you. You better get yourself an attorney. And you better get yourself an attorney right away. So what does he do? He gets an attorney, and the attorney doesn't let him talk to, they gave the handwriting samples. They answered any questions.
They gave their DNA.
They gave their DNA, which 2 weeks later was proven was not theirs. And the police didn't even give that information to the district attorney, let alone the press. I mean, until 6 or 7 months later, finally the district attorney found out that it wasn't their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So they hire an attorney. So, a lot of people say if you hire an attorney, you look guilty. Well, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it here again. If you don't hire an attorney, you're an idiot.
You look stupid.
Because it doesn't matter if you're innocent. You need someone who's going to guide you through this process. And you cannot count on the police to have your back. Even if you are innocent, you can't count on them going to do the right thing and to find who killed your daughter.
No, and they go do an interview. So they get the lawyer, they stop talking to the police, they go do an interview on CNN, and Patsy's basically like, somebody murdered my daughter.
Right.
And nobody's looking for this person.
Right.
Like, you people in Boulder, Colorado with young kids should be scared. And the mayor goes on TV and says,
right,
there's no need for fear.
Right.
Well, how the fuck do you know?
Right.
That's right. It's
Right.
crazy.
Right. There was no sign of forced entry. And they
Yes,
kept,
yes, there was.
yeah, they kept standing on that there was no snow. There's no footprints in the snow. Well, guess what? There was no snow by that window. There was no snow on the ground. There was no snow.
There was snow in the front of the house, but there's police photographs of the scene that show in that back area where that window was.
There was no snow.
There was no snow. The sun probably hit there. When I came out of work today, so it snowed in New Jersey today. When I came out of work today, I got there early, so I had the first parking spot, there's a lot of shade. By the time I left today, it was dark out. When I left, my car was still covered in snow. Not that it was super sunny today or anything, but the other cars had much less snow on it because they weren't so much in the shade. So that area was probably not shady.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for that mayor to go on TV and say
Absolutely.
that, it was just
damaging.
ridiculous.
It was damaging.
It was.
Oh, something else from the ransom note. The movie Ransom had come out 2 months earlier, and it was based on the same type of thing. Someone kidnapped their daughter, and they made them do all these crazy things in the movie. Speed was out in 1994, and in the movie Speed, there's a line in it that says, "Do not attempt to grow a brain," which is the same line that was in the
ransom note.
In the ransom note, yeah.
So the DNA report came out on January 15th that said that it was not the Ramseys, no one in the family. They had fingernails, shirt, panties, tape, and other places all collected, the DNA. The DNA under her fingernails and in her underwear were they knew it was specifically a male. And again, I'm not a DNA. I have no idea how they know that, but they know it was a male, and they know it was nobody within the family. And this DNA evidence is why I think that they are going to be able to find out who did it, because now John Ramsey has petitioned to have the FBI come in and run, it's called a familial DNA test. So if anybody within the family of this person, their DNA is in the database, it will come back as a hit, and then they can narrow it down. And they didn't have the ability to do that before.
Right. So in 2023, they did a cold case review panel.
Yes.
In Boulder, Colorado. It took over a year. And they also have a new police chief that came in 2024 from outside the system. So he's not promoted from internally. So this oversight review also recommended termination of 5 of their 7 detectives, one of which was the lead on the JonBenet case.
Mm-hmm.
So the DNA that what John's talking about is he has contacted outside of the FBI, CIA, internal police, DNA people. He's contacted DNA firms that will gladly, go in on the case, retest the material, test material that he says hasn't been tested.
The father's doing this.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
John is doing this. And what he's talking about is he's talking about being able to tap into, all the information that's out there, like on 23andMe and all these different places where tons of people, because when the police department, FBI and CIA is looking at,
they're only looking
DNA,
at criminals.
They're only looking at POTUS. They're only looking at if you've applied for a firearm, if you've, you know what I mean? There's different things that are in that database, and it's not a database of everybody.
Yeah, because towards the end of the documentary, they're like mentioning people that they investigated, and I'm like, oh, like the guy that the housekeeper said was in their garage a year prior.
Yeah, I have a list of those people.
Yeah, and I'm like, and then they're like, DNA wasn't there. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even the son, when he did the interview, like he does also believe that, with this new technology that they're going to find who the killer is. And he also believes, and I kind of agree with him, that the DNA is flawed. The DNA that they've been testing is flawed because it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, that's why on one hand, you think to yourself, well, that's what's going to crack the case is the DNA. But who knows how there was such a mess on that crime scene.
I know.
Right. Right.
But then again, you would think to yourself, okay, so yeah, there were a lot of people in and out of that house, but hopefully they would have kept track of who those people are. And hopefully they could have backtracked later on and said, okay, well, we kind of fucked up and we let people like run ramshot over this crime scene. So it could be this one that was there. Crime scene, like, let's test everybody involved and see if we can, you know what I'm saying? Like work backwards. But I just don't know how much stock is to be held in that DNA, which I don't know. So that's another big, I don't know. Like,
it is a big, I don't know. It is a big, I don't know. But honestly, I think that, again, even though it is a big, I don't know, I think that's going to be the only thing that's going to
that's all there is.
Yeah, that's going to crack it open. Another thing that, I saw, just another torturous thing that this family had to go through. Patsy Ramsey in 1998 was at home, and all of a sudden she turns on the TV and Geraldo Rivera is doing the trial, a mock trial of the Ramseys on TV.
Awful.
I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And this woman that was on there said that she watched 23 hours of tapes of her doing pageants and her performance on December 3rd at a senior citizen home, dressed as an elf with a saxophone, masturbating. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
She was out of her fucking mind, that woman.
She was out of her mind.
That was disgusting.
I could not believe that this poor family had to go through this. I mean, I just can't even imagine. I will say that.
How about what about the other beauty queen that said that she was sexually abused by her father and
Yes.
that JonBenet, she's showing all the signs, and then they were trying to say that the poor daughter who passed away was sexually abused by John. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you this. In 1997, a panel of 5 medical experts, one being the clinical professor of medicine, pediatric department of UC Davis, and he was acknowledged to be the foremost expert of child sex abuse in the country. And again, these 4 other medical experts did conclude that she had previously been assaulted. These medical
who?
5
JonBenet or Beth?
Yeah, and no, JonBenet, and they did
But
it.
her pediatrician said no. Her
Yeah, but
pediatrician said
he
she
had
never showed signs.
Right, but he had never done an internal examination. They did an internal examination at her autopsy, and that was part of the autopsy report.
After she was sexually abused by whatever
Right,
that thing was.
Right, but there are physical signs that can show past sexual abuse. I'm just telling you what was out there.
I don't buy that at all, because I'm sorry, but we're talking about 1996. Maybe you could do that now, but I don't know if you could do that back then. And if her own pediatrician, I mean, I understand her pediatrician wasn't doing an internal exam, for crying out loud. She was 6 years old, but she had been, this poor girl was brutally abused prior to passing away. And now they're doing an exam. Of course, they're going to see signs of that.
I don't know.
I saw the explanation of what they were saying could have possibly been a prior sexual assault was things like a UTI from not wiping properly.
She had seen her pediatrician 27 times in 3 years, and 5 of those visits were for vaginitis. And on 12/17, Patsy called the office 3 times between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then 8 days later, she was dead. I don't know. I'm just giving you all the what
Right.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Anything that I've read.
Yeah. Again, kids get UTIs. Kids, especially,
Well, especially if she had bedwetting issues.
100%.
That goes to you.
100%. It's like, I don't know. I felt like these parents never had a shot.
I agree. And
they never had a shot.
When I was when the documentary first came on, I'm like, oh, they were somehow involved. But towards the end, I'm like, my God, like everybody was out to get them.
Yeah. So the original detective that was on scene that's now retired, I told you I'd find his name. It's Bob Whitson. And the lead detective, Steve Thomas, is the one who was from narcotics unit that became the lead detective in a homicide.
Isn't that crazy?
From narcotics.
From narcotics.
So Bob, in 2001, he found out that there was a civil suit against Steve brought on by the Ramseys. So in 2001, the Ramseys went after Steve Thomas about the way the case was handled. Let's see. And you see like bits and pieces of him testifying throughout the Netflix documentary. They're asking him questions like, well, what do you think? Like every question they asked him, like the snow, the footprint in footwear impressions in the snow, he's the one who put that narrative out there. Steve Thomas is the one who put that narrative out there.
Is he the one with the and I'm not trying to comment on his look. I'm just trying to figure out who,
guys,
in the documentary, who he was. Was he the one that kind of had his eyebrow furrowed a little bit?
I don't think it. I don't.
Is he the one that wrote a book?
Yeah, there was one of the detectives that wrote a book, and I believe that's the one who got they brought the lawsuit against.
Yes,
yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. The guy who they brought the lawsuit against. Yes. Okay. And under oath, he said there was pressure. He said under oath there was pressure to put on there was pressure was put on the media and public to get the parents to confess, like Wendy said before.
Yes.
And he said that under oath.
And he's the one that someone had asked him directly, in regards to his theory of Patsy Ramsey and the whole bedwetting and her getting.
Yeah, because he's the one who came up with that theory. That was his theory.
No, it's his theory.
Yeah.
But they asked him, well, did you go upstairs and check her bed? Was it wet? And he was like, no, I didn't go.
He didn't check it. Right.
Like, you moron.
You
Right.
Absolute moron.
Yeah.
So now, what about them being indicted by the grand jury? What do you guys think about that? How does that happen?
So, but the grand jury didn't, the grand jury indicted them on
They didn't go through with it, but they
I know,
did.
but it wasn't on murder. It was on,
No.
it was on,
It was
hold
a
on.
child endangerment
Neglect?
resulting
Yeah.
in death
Right.
and accessory to first degree murder.
Right. So again, saying that they played a part in it.
Well, how can you say they played a part in it if you don't know what the part was that they played in it? And that's
don't know.
probably why the DA didn't go forward with it, because there wasn't any evidence. Listen, there wasn't. I mean, I don't know. I think what the public needs to understand is what actually a grand jury hearing is. So a grand jury hearing is only one side telling you what they think happened. So the prosecutor is telling these group of people their theory as to what happened. They are not even necessarily providing you with evidence to support this theory.
And they're not hearing any testimony from anyone involved.
They're not hearing any testimony from anyone involved, and they are not just hearing one side. And it's only a theory. It's only a theory.
We're hearing allegations and theories,
just allegations. So they come up with this conclusion after this farce of, it was a year long. It was a year long. So, of course,
talk about fucking
waste of taxpayer money and time.
100%.
Of course, the district attorney how is he going to bring charges up against them for that? There's no evidence that supports that.
No, there's not.
The only evidence that could possibly support that is saying that Patsy wrote the ransom note, in my personal opinion.
Okay, so let's say
that's the only thing but here's the thing, and this is what I said to Eric, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. If there's a part of you that doubts it, you can't indict them.
Listen, where's the motive? There's no motive.
I'll tell you what I think the motive is.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I think. I would have I think that there's a 50, let's say there's a 70% chance of an intruder. And then the rest, I would go on the motive that they came home, they put the kids to bed. Burke admits that he got up and went downstairs to mess with a toy. JonBenet, my theory is, also got up. They had some pineapple, dicking around. They got into an argument. He hits her, knocks her out. It's like, oh, fuck, I don't know what to do. Goes upstairs, goes to bed. John comes down, finds her, and says, the fuck? What am I going to do with this? And then goes forth and stages everything from there. This is a very plausible theory that's out there. Like when you watch the videos of him being interviewed right after it.
The 9-year-old?
The 9-year-old. He's like...
The brother.
The brother.
No.
Burke. He's like, I had great time on playing my Nintendo. There was reports that he rubbed feces all in her bed previously and had put it on her box of chocolates that she got for Christmas. He had 2 years earlier, she had gotten hit in the head from him with a golf club. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that that's something, to me, there's not a lot that makes sense in the case. And unfortunately, that's something that
I don't think that's plausible. I don't think it's plausible at all.
Here's my thing with this, though. Okay, so the father's going to stage it. Why would he stage?
Why? Because
the implement, and he's going to insert that into her vagina just to stage her death? I mean,
no.
Listen, it's all crazy.
If you're going to stage your, God forbid, but if you're going to stage your 6-year-old daughter's death, are you going to go to that length?
And then why are you going to write a ransom note and leave it there? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There's no that's
But the ransom note doesn't make any sense in it in
The
and of
ransom note
itself.
really doesn't make any sense.
No,
No
It
matter
really
how you
doesn't.
slice it.
the only thing I think is plausible with that ransom note, when we didn't get there yet, is that one guy that he was on the phone with for
Yes.
all the that guy. I think that guy is guilty, to be quite honest with you.
But then if you're going to go with the DNA evidence, he was
Right.
cleared from the DNA.
But
And
that's
he
why I think
supposedly
the
wasn't even in
DNA
the country at the time.
No, not him. It was the other guy that wasn't. There was another one that had an alibi.
But the guy who was out of the country, who was the teacher in Thailand, he was the
Right,
one who
he
was on
was-
the phone with the guy for
Yeah.
hours.
He was right.
Yeah.
For a long time, for months and months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, I have his name written down too.
Daxis or something.
Yes, Daxis.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get there yet. But
John, yeah. All right. Well, we can wait till you do.
Well, we're on 55 minutes. We might want to move this along.
Okay. Yeah, his name was John Mark Carr.
Yes.
That was his real name.
Right.
After
That
they
was his real
finally, after they
Right.
finally found that out.
Yeah. Yeah, he had 11 hours. This Michael Tracy, who was a professor,
Thank
had
you.
11 hours.
I have his last name written very tiny, and I'm like, shit, I don't have my readers.
11 hours of tape phone conversations.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, just the whole thing.
I mean, even Lou Smith, so the DA Hunter hired Lou Smith to come in, and as soon as the grand jury was assembled, he just, I'm out, like he's out. And, he still was investigating it. His family to this day is still investigating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is still investigating it. And these, this guy, John Smith, talked to Patsy before she died. Listen, I don't think that there's no way that mom had anything to do with this. There's just no way. There's no way. I can't give it 1% chance. I just can't. I can't believe that she would do that.
The ransom note has a doubt in my mind. That's where I would point the finger at the parents.
Yeah,
But him staging that death and going to those lengths.
Wasn't for her sexual assault, then I would be more plausible to think that they staged it. Now,
For sure. I agree with you. I agree with you.
The other thing that some people say, and who knows, is that, he was stationed in the Philippines. There's a lot of funky shit that goes on and military bases with children. His friend, Fleet White, was accused of sexual assault previously. Patsy's dad was like a Freemason. When you get into that whole deprived, really rich people can be really fucked up. I'm not saying that that's
those Freemasons
case.
are questionable.
I'm just saying that.
All right, now the Freemasons are coming for us.
Now the Freemasons come on
It's
in.
fine. It's totally fine. I'm joking. But listen, the other thing was in September of 1997, there was an incident where a little girl was assaulted not far from the Ramseys' house. The mom heard something and chased the intruder out with pepper spray. That girl attended the same dance school as JonBenet.
Yeah.
Yes. And there was
Okay.
something with a photographer. The photographer, Randy Simons.
Yes.
He was walking down the street and told the cops, I did not kill JonBenet.
Yeah. Walking down the street naked.
Right.
Naked. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I left that key piece out.
Yeah. Well, then.
But again, his DNA didn't match.
And then there's the singer. There's this other guy, Gary Oliva. There's the housekeeper and her husband. Then there's a guy we already talked about, that John Mark Carr. So it's just, there's so many plausible intruder ideas, but they all get knocked down because of the DNA.
Right.
Well, that's why I'm saying that I think that's the reason we're going to find the killer. And I think that that's also the flaw in this case. So to try and figure it out,
I do think it was this John Mark Carr. He's the one that the housekeeper said was in the garage a year before.
Yeah.
Right. In their house in Michigan, not in Boulder.
Yeah.
In Georgia, I thought
it was.
No, they have a summer house in Michigan. And that's where the housekeeper comes in twice a year and checks on the place. She said that I think the previous year they were there in the summer And she, after seeing his picture, said, hey, last summer or whatever, the guy came in the garage and was like asking questions and acting like wonky. So I don't know.
And this guy, so when his DNA was cleared, they just let him go.
Yeah.
That teacher, they just let him go.
Yeah, because he was actually a substitute teacher in JonBenet's elementary school for a couple months. And then other teachers made complaints about him because his language they didn't feel was appropriate. And he got asked to leave. And then he went to another school and then he was charged with child porn and he fled the country.
That was in California. Yeah, he was in California.
And then he fled to Thailand.
The country. Yeah.
And then that's when he was talking to that professor. He knew that this professor was close to the Ramsey family and he wanted the last picture of JonBenet that was taken of her before she died. And he asked for this guy, the professor, Michael Tracy, to send it to him. So he sent it to a PO box in Thailand, which led to his arrest and extradition. But weird thing, like he knew the nickname that JonBenet used for her grandmother.
Yes.
That was weird. But maybe he had her in class. And maybe
they
did a little
he
assignment.
admit to doing it. He said he did it.
He said he did it. And according to Michael Tracy, he thinks, and I agree with him, like the DNA was contaminated at the crime scene.
Yeah.
So that's why, this is coming back, that it's not a DNA match, but maybe they get this familial stuff and maybe they'll be able to get something that makes it more of a match. Do you know what I'm saying? They'll be able to pull from someplace else because there were so many other things. Like he even explained the reason there was a ransom note, and what the thought process was,
But meanwhile, we're going on almost 30 years. And if it was this douchebag teacher, he's had the last almost 30 years to do this.
He's busy, I'm sure.
Other little girls. Maybe not kill them, but sexually abuse them.
So after he left the country, he taught in Thailand, he taught in Germany, he taught in all these places.
Yeah.
Some of them were like girls' schools. Gross. And he even said that he started to write the note to both parents and then changed his mind.
Right. He said that. And it would explain Mr. and Mrs. Because he didn't want to address Patsy. He didn't want her name included. He specifically addressed it to John.
Now, another weird thing he said, he was in an interview and he said that the interviewee was asking him, so do you know JonBenet? Do you have a relationship with her? And he kept saying, yeah, well, I knew her, but I knew hundreds of children.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Right.
Creepo.
But see, that's the weird thing where you get into this weird thing was like, well, how did you know?
Is he just mentally ill?
Well, no. How did he know her?
Even the fact that when he called him up and he gave him the fake name and he said, you'll never find me. No one will ever find me. I mean, if he didn't want that picture, he's right. They probably would have never found him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So this is someone who is diabolical.
Yeah.
And has planned this and that's why I think it's him. I mean, whoever planned this murder / kidnapping is not the run-of-the-mill, pervert. This guy is international.
Yeah. Yeah. How about in 2016, CBS did a show saying that the brother Burke did it. And he fucking sued and they settled.
$750 million.
Yeah, who knows what they settled for, but that was what his claim was.
And Detective Steve Thomas, they sued him too, and they settled. They sued him for $80 million, him and the publisher, and they won. Well, they settled. I shouldn't say they won. And at that point, by the time they sued all these people, they had already spent all their money, trying to find out who the killer was.
Oh, yeah, right.
To defend themselves and try to find out who the killer was. It's just sad. It's very sad. I hope that we do find out who the killer is. If I had to say right now, I would say it's John Marquardt or someone related to John Marquardt or some connection to John Marquardt or John Marquardt knows the person that
Yeah, because
killed.
when he did that interview and then he was, she was trying to get him to say whether he knew her, and he said, "Well, I've known hundreds of children, but I'm not going to discuss it because there's innocent people involved, and I want to protect those innocent people."
You're like, what does that mean?
I don't know. Don't know. So John Ramsey is expected to meet with the Boulder police in January this month. So hopefully,
Yeah.
they're going to go over that whole review that they had, that year-long review, and hopefully they're going to, move forward with some DNA stuff.
Yeah, I
Hopefully a
hope
public
so.
apology is coming to the father too. If and when they find the real killer, the Boulder police will make a public apology to the father.
Hopefully, if that's the case, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, this is just it's really tragic that this family had to suffer the loss of their daughter and the public scrutiny. I mean, Patsy Ramsey, till the day she died. And I just hope John Ramsey finally gets, I hope before he passes that they finally find out. And his, poor Burke, I mean,
Yeah.
9 years old. Can you imagine 9 years old and this is what your life is? I mean, they couldn't go to the store to buy school supplies because his face was plastered all over the tabloids that Burke killed his. I mean, what? I mean, how could they be so irresponsible?
Yes.
How can they be so irresponsible?
And look, I hate even thinking the idea that it was a possibility, or that the parents covered it up, or that, John Ramsey himself was into some sadistical stuff along with Fleet White and all these other prominent people, and that's why the case got... I hate to even think it, but the problem is that we know how depraved really wealthy people
shit like
can
this really
be.
happens.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It really, I mean, wealthy people do really fucked up things and get away
Yeah.
with them all the time. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just saying, as implausible as it seems, some things are plausible because of how fucked up some people really are.
Of course.
I mean, I would hate to think that the Ramseys and anybody in the family had anything to do with it. It's fucking horrible.
Yeah, but most of the time it is somebody in the family.
Most of the time it is somebody in the family.
Cops were so narrowed in on them. But come on,
Well, I think they were narrowed in on them because they were inexperienced, and that was the easy fucking out.
Right.
That's
Like at some
easy out.
point, you're like, okay, this isn't adding up. We need to broaden our search. We need,
So
like,
I don't know.
They kept stayed steadfast with that. It's like, it's not happening. You don't got it.
I don't know. Like I said, like Gwen said, I hope there's some resolution to it, and
Yeah,
I
my
certainly
God.
hope it's before John Ramsey passes away, especially if the family had nothing to do.
Well, listen, he's gonna, when he's not here anymore, he's gonna be reunited with his wife and his daughter. That's
Right.
so
Both
at
daughters.
the end of it,
Yes.
both daughters, right? Well, at the end of it, when John, the father, was talking about Patsy passing and being with JonBenet, I said it and he said it at the same time. He's like, well, she knows now who did it. And I said the same thing. And Eric just looked at me. I'm like, well, they're in heaven. They know everything
They
right
know
now.
everything.
Right. Exactly.
He was like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
It didn't click. I'm like, all that Catholic school really paid off, Eric. Money well spent.
Yes.
Well, let us know what you guys think. Put your thoughts in the comments and, let us know what you think. This is our kind of synopsis and our ideas and our, hypothesis, but we don't know either,
No, I don't.
No,
Who knows?
Listen, it very, very well could have been the parents, and
Who
you know
knows?
what I mean?
I certainly
don't think so
hope
now,
not.
but I did at the beginning of the documentary. I did, and
But
Eric
there's
did
just,
too.
there's a lot of sick pedophiles out there. There's a lot of sick,
That's
wealthy
the problem.
people.
It could just be some random person still running around doing it.
Accidents happen. There's all kinds of different avenues to go with it. So who knows?
Who knows? But I will leave you with this note. If ever you're questioned by the police, get an attorney.
Absolutely.
Get an attorney. Do not answer any questions. I don't care if you're innocent, especially if you're innocent. Get an attorney.
Even for the smallest thing.
Yes, get an attorney.
I would definitely get an attorney. Even the smallest thing.
I agree.
I would hate to say that, but I think that that's the intelligent thing to do.
For
Yeah.
sure.
So get
For
an
sure.
attorney.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time, unless you guys have, and I feel like we should I don't like ending like this.
Well, how do you want to end? You want to crack the case? We can't. We can't
I
crack
felt
the
like there
case.
was something in Bravo News today.
Bravo News. What Bravo News?
No.
I don't think so.
I thought there was.
Listen, what we're gonna do is we're gonna end it on this note.
Okay.
We are gonna pray for everybody in their hour of need and suffering.
Yeah,
because
that's for sure.
right now, at this very second, there's millions of people who are in their deepest, darkest hour of suffering in some way, shape, or form. Maybe somebody just died. Maybe somebody else's kid got murdered. Maybe somebody just got in a horrible accident and have no money to get a new. Somebody is suffering. So we're just going to pray for everybody in their hour of need and suffering.
That's
Okay.
Okay.
I can get behind that.
You
Thank
get
you.
on
Right.
that?
I'm buying that.
All right,
Okay.
good.
And you better get right with Jesus.
That's
That's
right.
it.
Everybody
You
better
better
get right
try.
with Jesus.
You better.
Or whoever your higher power is.
Exactly.
Let's leave it at that. I don't want to
Yeah,
keep
for us,
pushing
it's
our own
Jesus. For
beliefs,
you,
but
whatever.
whoever your higher power is, get right
Yep.
with them.
Get right with it.
Okay.
All right. Good night.
Good
All right,
night.
good night.